Hello everyone, my name is Chang-Yu from the Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama. And for those who can't really pronounce my name and remember it, I finally got a good way for you to impress you. It's like you are saying January, but someone just interrupts you, so Jan-Yu, which is so simple. I can't believe I spent 30 seconds to introduce my name. Anyway, we are recently doing an individual project to analyze a piece involving our principal instruments. And as you might have known, mine is the flute. When it comes to choosing a piece, I actually spent quite a while to decide whether I would do the Baroque music or the new music. But among all these classical eras, I still feel that I prefer the new music more. So I finally made up my mind to do a really cool piece called Hatching Aliens. It's a piece composed by a British composer, Ian Clarke, in 2008. And this piece mainly aims at creating an atmosphere filled with our imaginations toward aliens. As a result, the presentation I'm going to give today will mainly focus on the story that this piece is telling, along with the performer's skills on interpretation. So here are my outlines throughout the presentation. I believe I've already done the very first one. And it follows by the background knowledge of this piece, ideas regarding performance and interpretation, the flute extended techniques and how they are arranged in this piece. Last but not least, the conclusion of the presentation. So yeah, I've mentioned that this piece was composed in 2008, and its premiere was officially performed in Manchester in the same year. The composer, Ian Clarke, gives a brief image of this piece. Hatching aliens is a journey of the imagination, as the opening sentence of the preface. He also states that some of the ideas come from Stravinsky's Rite of Spring and a film called Aliens. And in fact, when I got to hear this piece in person in a concert, I did feel it uncomfortable because the music is so unsteady, as if there are a few aliens surrounding you. Well, then how does this composer make this piece so mysterious? We may then have to talk about the atmosphere creating. In this section, I'm going to use a video presented by my former instructor, Yunru Chen, to show you how this piece sounds like. This piece can be divided into 3 movements, or let's say 3 parts. The first movement starts with a very unearthly opening part. Unlike 99% of the pieces that use a full, well-projected flute sound, this opening paragraph uses a lot of air sound to create a mysterious atmosphere. To me, it's like the sun effect that a UFO is landing on the Earth. So I would say it's really successful on arranging this feeling to the audience. After the opening part, the first motif appears, using a lot of dissonant intervals and even quarter tones to bring up the tension. With the tension gradually built up, the flutter-tone and the trills are applied to create the sound effect as if the aliens are yelling in their language. All of a sudden, the aliens calm down, bringing the music back to the first motif. And similarly, the first motif develops itself, accumulating some motion, and bursts into a shout to end this movement. The second movement, on the contrary, is as calm as its given topic, Alien Chill Out, Blue Alien. In this part, many glissandos and quarter tones are used to create a sentimental character. And the blue words in the topic might also refer to the quarter tones because they are also known as blue notes in the 20th century jazz music. Well, in terms of playing these quarter tones, I would say it's somehow really hard for the flute players. That might be easier if I were a trombone player. In the beginning of the third movement, the fear returns. The air song comes back to recall the feeling of fear. As the fast tempo being set, a screaming paragraph brings up a new motif in the third movement. Some of the motif in the first movement also recall in the second half of the third movement. As the tension being built up again by the minor second trills, the whole piece ends with a strong and powerful harmonic series on C, leaving the audience surprised and impressed by this amazingly written piece. So that was the overall story of Hatching Aliens. In order to completely play this piece, the flute players will need to work on those so-called extended techniques to achieve such sound effects. So I categorize these extended techniques into 6 categories: jet whistles, key clips, tone skills, voice, quarter tone, and harmonic series. In this section, I'm going to demonstrate how these techniques are played on the flute. So the first one, jet whistle. Jet whistle is used many times in the beginning of the first and the third movement. This one is quite simple. We can just finger the low C, and instead of a normal mouse position, we need to cover the embouchure hole and make sure the airstream is fast and concentrated. If the sound is not loud enough, we can refer to the continuity equation, which means given the same volume of air, the smaller the area that fluid passes through, the faster the fluid flows. Alright, that works. And that was for the exhaling jet whistles. For the inhaling jet whistles in bar 2, we simply just reverse the direction of the airflow. But you will discover that it makes no sound. So what you can do here is to close up your teeth like this and inhale. The sound effect will then be much more obvious. And this technique can be further developed to a sound effect like an arrow flying past your ear, such as. There are also some similar techniques in the second and the third movement. In the second movement, the player is asked to play whistle into the flute, like this. And the third movement being asked to play no voice but air in the flute, which is pretty much like my sound when I was a beginner. And the second group of the techniques is the key clips. The key clips has already widely been used in many other new music flute pieces. In this piece, however, the key clips is only used from bar 9 to 12. Usually, there will be given fingerings on the sheet music, while in this piece, we are asked to make it sounded like a major seventh, so I will play it like this. And here you see TS, tone stop, which is part of the third group of the techniques, tone skills. This tone stop creates a really cool sound effect like you are opening a water bottle. So this part will be played like. For the flute players, it's really common to use double tone in those fast paragraphs. But what if we use double tone while inhaling? Yeah, so this imitates the mechanical sound effect of the alien's aircraft. And the next one is the flutter tone. Flutter tone is also used in many other pieces. While in this piece, the flutter tone is like. But you can see that in this phrase, it asks us to not only play the flutter tone, but also to sing at the same time. So the fourth group is the voice. If we add the voice into this phrase, that becomes. Well, so how do we achieve that? I will take this phrase in the third movement for example. If we want to play it like this, we basically just need to vibrate our throat to make that lower octave sound. The fifth group of the techniques, also the most important ones, is the quarter tones, which means that you need to play a note that is in between a semitone. The notation on the sheet is also very interesting. For example, the note here means you need to play a C sharp, but not that sharp as C sharp, which is slightly flatter than C sharp. The normal interval between C sharp and C is, while this note is in between this interval. Same thing happens again in the next bar. This note means it's a D flat, but not that flat as D flat. The normal interval between D and D flat is, and the quarter tone here. So the phrase be like. There are also a notation like this, which means a bit sharper than F sharp, so it will be in between G and an F sharp. So why would I say it's really an important technique to play those quarter tones in this piece? The reason is really simple. The flute player takes the main role to play these quarter tones because it's impossible to be on the piano. This technique can also be extended to the glissandos in the coming section, like this phrase here. So how do we make this? We can slide our fingers off the keys gradually and it works. And of course, this can only be played on those flutes with open holes. Alright, so you may be really confused by those notes at the first sight and wondering how am I going to play these? But don't worry, the composer himself is actually a flutist as well, so he already works these fingerings out and print it on the sheet. So what you need to do is just follow the tips and get used to them. The sixth group, also the last group I'm going to talk about today, is the harmonic series, and they are used in two places in this piece. In bar 222 to 233 of the third movement, the double tones appears. I was wondering at first, like, I'm not even a string player, but the fingerings are also provided here, so they would be like this. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say today. Let's just sum up this presentation. In the new music pieces, it's usually very challenging for the performers to play those fancy things on their instruments. In Hatchinalians especially, I would say it's really performer-oriented because your body movement and your face expressions can also affect the atmosphere. And of course, we will need to work out those fancy, magical, extended techniques before we can really play this whole piece throughout. So here are my references. And if you really want to listen to the whole piece, you can also search Hatching Aliens on YouTube. Alright, that's it. I hope this video is useful for you and hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!